Whether you're a graphic designer that's looking to land your next design job, or you're a freelancer looking to land more higher paying clients, one of the best ways you can do that is to have a great standout portfolio. As an art director with over 17 years of experience in the industry, I can tell you that I've looked through thousands of design portfolios over the years, and I keep seeing the exact same mistakes again and again and again. That's why in this video, I'll be walking you through the top 10 most common mistakes I see, so that way you can avoid them, you can update your own work, and you can land your next gig or client. Let's get into it. All right, so as I mentioned in the intro, these are the 10 most common portfolio mistakes that I keep seeing that you should avoid. The first mistake I see all the time is not providing enough context. And so when I say not providing enough context, what I mean is that your projects are just image dumps instead of case studies. So it's just image after image after image. There's no information about what the project was or what you achieved, what problems did you solve. It's just images, right? It's not really telling a story. It's not really showcasing your value. So what that does is that it makes you look like a pixel pusher instead of a problem solver, right? So we're all designers, we're making things that look great, we're making beautiful images. That's par for the course. But what's going to get you a job, what's going to get you paid, what's going to land you higher paying clients is showing that you're more than just a designer, that you're a problem solver. So not only did you create something that looks great, but also you solved a problem and you're able to articulate that in a case study. That shows me as a hiring manager a ton of value, whereas just a bunch of images really doesn't do that for me. And so my recommendation there is that if you want to move up the ladder, if you want to get higher paying clients, if you want to ask for that raise, you want to get a promotion, you want to dress for the job you want, right? So you want to be including that context, showing that you're more than just a designer, showing that you have that strategic thinking ability. That's going to go a really long way. So when I talk about context, I'm talking about including things like the project scope, the goal, the problems you solved, key takeaways, and results. So you want to be including all this information with your projects, kind of walk the client through it as if you're telling a story about the project itself. Why did you make the decisions that you did make? How did you get to that end result? And what did the client think about it? Did it work really well? What are those results that you saw? So this is one of those big mistakes to avoid, is not providing enough context. So next up, kind of in that same vein, a very common mistake I see is not including results and metrics in your case studies. Even if you do provide context, a lot of designers don't include metrics. And so the problem there is that design without metrics is subjective, right? A client or a hiring manager looking at your portfolio might like the colors you chose, they might like the fonts you chose, they might like the design, or they might not, right? It's subjective, it's up to them on their design eye, their personal tastes. So when you include metrics and they back up that you solved the problem, that it was a successful project, you're removing that subjectivity, right? It's now objectively a successful project. It's no longer up for debate, right? Another great thing about including metrics is that the higher your perceived value to the company, the more you'll be paid. So if you're showing that you're generating revenue with these projects, that you're getting more click-throughs, that you're increasing the bottom line for the company, it's easy when you go ask for a raise. When you, at the end of the year, say, hey, I've done all this work, here's the results I got. I generated X amount of revenue, it's 10X my salary. It makes it really easy for you to ask for that raise. When if you don't have that, then it's just, you're asking for a raise based on how hard you worked and things that are very vague and kind of up for interpretation. Where again, numbers don't lie, right? So anytime you can include results and metrics in your projects, I highly recommend doing that. Some of the metrics that you can include are things like social engagements for a project, the revenue you generated, the number of assets that you designed, the clicks, the product sold. So these are all things that you should be thinking about when the project starts, right? So you want to be meeting with stakeholders, project managers, making sure that everyone agrees on what the KPIs are, and then making sure that they're tracked throughout the project. I know that this is an area of struggle for a lot of designers where they feel like they don't have a seat at the table. They're not receiving these metrics. At a lot of companies, metrics are kind of political. A lot of people like to gatekeep them. They don't like to share them if they don't have to. But I've done it myself. I encourage you to fight for a seat at that table, fight to get access to those metrics, it's going to go such a long way for yourself, for your career, for your portfolio. It really takes you from, again, a designer to a problem solver. It really helps you make that jump. And so another type of result to share is if you won any awards, right? So if you submitted your project to awards, you won it, you got featured somewhere, definitely include that on your portfolio piece. Again, you're adding social proof, you're adding results that take out the subjectivity of whether or not someone likes it or not. So here's a great example I found from Gabriel Tarrin's portfolio, where he provides context and metrics on all of his projects. So here we see his project for promoting good. So he's starting off with a sizzle video. It draws us in, it makes us want to keep scrolling. So I love that. Then he immediately starts with an overview. So he's telling us about the company, he's telling us about the project, he's providing that context. So that way, as we look through the rest of the project, we kind of know what to be looking for, we know what to expect, we understand why he made these decisions that he made. So here, then it's some more work, and then we get into the strategy. So now he's talking about his thought process, why he made those decisions. Then moving down into key insights. This is great that he had a eureka moment in this project and he wanted to call that out. So again, you're showing problem solving, you're showing your thought process. And then he's talking about the solution. So he talked about the company, the project, the objective, the key insights, and now the solution that he came up with and why it looks the way that it does, right? So then some more work here. This is really nicely designed and laid out. There's some motion. And then finally, we get down here to the outcome to kind of put a cherry on everything. You see here that he says the website traffic and social engagement increased by nearly 67%. So he's including some metrics here. Would love to see even more metrics, but again, as designers, we got to take what we can get, right? So I love that he is including metrics, he is including results. And so this is a great example of how to include context in a case study. So the next mistake I see all the time is including the wrong number of projects in your portfolio. And so when I say that, and this is a subjective number here, but just again, based on the thousands that I've looked through, I think 6 to 8 projects is that sweet spot. When you include less than 6 projects, it makes it difficult to get a grasp of your abilities, right? So if you only have 3 projects in your portfolio, I don't really know the breadth of your skill set. I don't really know what your focus is. It's just not enough content there for me to really wrap my head around it. I will say that if you are more junior, if you're in college or you're fresh out, it's okay to have less projects. You certainly want to prioritize quality over quantity. So if you don't have 6 great projects, that's okay. Only include your best work. But if you're more of a mid-weight designer and you have 6 good projects, then I highly recommend aiming for at least that number between 6 and 8. So the problem with including more than 8 projects means that you're likely including work that isn't your best. So if you have 10, 12, 15 projects, I've seen 20, 30 projects before. Some people just really want to show the breadth of their skill set, and so they want to put everything into their portfolio. And so the danger with that is that your portfolio is only as good as your weakest piece. So you only want to be including the best of the best. You don't want to give a hiring manager a reason to put your portfolio in the no pile. If they're teetering on your portfolio and they're not sure, they might look through a few more projects. And so then if they find one that has cracks in it, the typography is not great, it looks rushed, it's gonna get your portfolio skipped over, right? So only put your best foot forward. I've mostly seen that 6 to 8 is that sweet spot. If you've been doing this for a really long time, maybe you can push that number to 10 or 12. But I mean, just to give you some context, I've been doing this for 17 years and I only have 8 projects in my portfolio. So I think it's a good number for 99% of people. Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you're finding this video valuable so far. If you are, please take a second to like the video, subscribe to the channel. As a small content creator, every single engagement counts, and be sure to leave a comment down below. As always, I'll be reading and replying to every single one. All right, enough of that. Let's get back to the video. The next mistake I see all the time is not showing your actual work in context. And so what I mean by that is sometimes designers just kind of export their work as JPEGs straight out of Photoshop, and they make that their project, right? It's just a bunch of final JPEGs. And that is certainly part of what you should be showing, but it makes it really difficult for a client to kind of understand where that work lives, right? So for example, let's say that you designed a brochure for a corporate conference, right? So instead of just taking that brochure you designed, exporting it as a JPEG and putting it up on your case study, you can instead put that into a mock-up that shows the conference in the background. It kind of shows where it's going to live, what the vibe of that environment is like. Why did you design the brochure the way you did? How does that match the event itself, right? So even better yet, other than mock-ups, if you can get some actual photography of the work in the real world, if it's signage for a storefront, going to the storefront with a camera, hiring a photographer, taking some really nice photos, is gonna go such a long way when you showcase your work, right? It looks great. It shows hiring managers and clients where the project lives. So it lets them scroll really quickly and understand the context and the scope of the work. One thing to call out here is be careful to not go overboard. I've seen some portfolios where designers will put 30, 40, 50 mock-ups where they just kind of designed a logo and they slapped it on every mock-up that they could possibly find. So that starts to muddle the context, right? If the logo's on everything and it needs to live everywhere, then you're not really sure where it is actually supposed to live. Like, what's the niche? What's the environment, right? So definitely, again, curate. It's quality, not quantity. Have some really nice looking mock-ups and photography that show the work in context. And that brings me nicely into the next mistake to avoid, which is using low quality mock-ups. And so I see this all the time, and it is heartbreaking because using low quality mock-ups will ruin even the best design work, right? So you spent all this time designing this beautiful logo, and now you go download some low quality free mock-ups that you found, and you slap the logo on there and they're pixelated and it looks like it's like a 90s 3D animation or something like that. As a hiring manager, as a client, it just ruins the piece. It's so distracting when a mock-up is low quality. So instead, you wanna think like an art director, right? You wanna choose mock-ups that match the tone and direction of the design. You wanna make sure that they are high quality. So again, going back to that previous example of a brochure for a corporate event, choosing mock-ups that match that tone and the direction and keeping that consistent throughout the case study is gonna show that you know how to think like an art director, you know how to curate, you have a good eye for design. A great way to accomplish that is by using multiple mock-ups from the same series to make all the images look cohesive. So this is kind of a problem with free mock-ups versus paid mock-ups, where with free mock-ups, a lot of the times they kind of will give you one for free from a series, a different website gives you another one, and you can kind of like piece together a bunch of free mockups for a case study. But the problem there is that it doesn't look cohesive, right? The different mockups from different websites have different lighting or different background shading, different textures. It just becomes obvious that it's not from the same collection of mockups, and therefore it's experientially breaking, right? For the most part, mockups are supposed to look like photography, like you went there with your camera, you took photos of your work in the real world, and therefore the lighting, the style, the angles would all be kind of cohesive together. So I would recommend buying mock-ups, finding mock-ups that are from the same collection that look like they belong together. So some places that you can go to find high quality mock-ups, and I'm not affiliated with any of these websites, they're just the ones that I use, but the Brand Identity, Supply Family, and Bandito Mockups. Those are some websites that have some really high quality mockups. They are premium, so you'd have to pay for them, which I know can hurt as a designer, paying for mockups when they're just going in your portfolio. But trust me, using quality mockups is going to pay dividends in the long run. It's going to make you present so much more professional. It's going to attract higher paying clients. So I think it is a worthy investment. So here's a great example of a designer that's using some really high quality mockups. This is Timothy Mauer's portfolio. And so as you can see, they're all very curated. They all feel very professional. They're kind of all in the same vibe, which yours don't have to be in the same vibe for different projects, but this designer has done that to show you that he really has a vision that he brings to each project. But the mock-ups just look great, right? They're clean, they're professional, they look well lit, they look like product photography. And so it just adds so much quality to this designer's work that if these were just JPEGs or if they were low quality mock-ups, it just wouldn't be the same, right? You would not get that premium feeling from Timothy's work. So I think this is a great example. So the next mistake to avoid that I see all the time is not using a professional domain name. And I see this one especially from college students or just junior designers who are starting out. And look, I get it. When you're just starting out, money is tight. It's really difficult to justify spending money on anything. But in this case, domain names are really cheap. A lot of the times you can get them for free with your website hosting. You can get the first year for $1 on some places. And even if you're paying full price, it's usually only $12 or $13 a year. And it goes such a long way for making you come across as a serious professional, right? So the problem with using a free domain name is that it's a red flag to potential clients and hiring managers, right? It makes it look like design is just a side hustle for you. It makes it seem like maybe this is your first project, that you don't do this full time. And so if you're a client that's thinking about spending thousands of dollars with someone, if you're a hiring manager that's thinking about paying someone a large salary, that's a big red flag, right? That you're not serious enough to spend $12 a year to get a professional domain name. So again, using a paid domain just shows that you're a serious professional who already has paying clients. You've been doing this for a bit. You have the funds to invest in yourself. It's not just a side gig. And also, like, think about it. Using a professional domain name makes your site more memorable and easier to share. So let's say you're at an event, you're talking to someone who needs some design work, you're hitting it off. They say, great, what's your portfolio? I'd love to check out your work. And you say it's wixsite.com/johndoe-myportfolio. They're gonna just forget that immediately, right? They're not gonna write that down. They're not gonna put it in their phone. They're probably going to just write you off and look for someone else that has a professional domain name. So this is that scenario pretty much, right? So put yourself in your client's shoes. As a client, which domain name are you more likely to trust with thousands of dollars? johndoe.wixsite.com/myportfolio or johndoe.com. Really, it's just a very simple thing. It's a no-brainer. Obviously, the professional domain name just comes across so much better. The other one just comes across very junior and more amateurish. It comes across like a side hustle. So invest the $12, get a professional domain name. So the next common mistake I see all the time is over-designing your website. And so what I mean by that is that as designers, we really want to show off what we can do. We want to show off our skill set. We want to show people our design chops. And so we tend to go overboard with things, right? We're using too many fonts. We're using too many colors. We've got graphic elements everywhere. And so what that does is it ends up distracting from the actual design work, right? People are on your portfolio to see your work. And so if your website is actually distracting from that, then you're kind of missing the whole purpose of the website. So in order to have a well-designed website instead of an over-designed website, you want to limit the number of fonts you're using. You want to lay everything out on a grid. You want to utilize plenty of white space. You just want to, again, put the focus on the work instead of the site design itself. A great way to think about it is to create a brand system for your website to keep everything consistent. So again, establishing these are the fonts I use. This is the H1, H2, H3. This is the body. These are the styles. This is the color palette. Just kind of put everything into a brand system, keep it consistent. It's not only going to make your work shine because you're putting the focus on your work, but it's also going to make your website look very professional. It's going to show hiring managers that you know how to establish a system and stick to it. And so it's really a win-win by having a well-designed website, not an over-designed website. And so I think this is a great example of a well-designed website by Guangxi Kai. It has a very well-established hierarchy. It's very restrained. There's plenty of white space here. And so they're putting the emphasis on the work itself, on these projects. They have motion. They're popping off the page. It makes you want to click into them. It's really exciting, but the website itself isn't all that exciting, right? And your website doesn't have to be clinical like this necessarily. You can have some personality in there, but it's about finding that balance. I feel like a lot of designers just take it too far and it becomes distracting. And so you see they just have these like simple animations. It's very pleasant. The focus is on these huge, wide, full screen images. It's really about the work instead of about the site design itself. You can tell they know what they're doing, that they know how to establish a system for the website. And so again, I think this is a great example of a well-designed site, not over-designed. So the next mistake I see all the time is slow loading pages and assets. So the problem is that it doesn't matter how great your site looks if people bounce before it even loads, right? When I go to websites like awards.com, like I love browsing that website inspiration, some of the best websites I've ever seen, but a lot of them have like these 10, 20-second loading bars at the beginning of the website where me as a designer, I'm okay waiting because I know it's gonna be this like sick web design, but as a client, as a hiring manager, I would have left already. I'm not gonna sit there and wait for 10, 20 seconds for a website to load, no matter how cool it is. As a hiring manager, I've got 100 portfolios to get through. I don't have time to sit there. So make sure that you're balancing how great your website looks with how well it works. Some ways to do that. One is to use Photoshop to export JPEGs at appropriate sizes and compression levels. So don't put a 4K PNG on your website. Don't put like these crazy huge images that aren't optimized. You want to make sure that you're using something like Photoshop to compress them. JPEGs, like 1920 is probably the largest you would ever want to go on the web. And then a JPEG compression of like 6 or something like that is probably a sweet spot. And on top of that, you want to make sure that you're using tools to speed up your site like page caching, image compression, and lazy loading. So obviously this type of stuff kind of depends on the website builder you're using, the hosting you're using, but whether you're using WordPress, Framer, Webflow, whatever the case may be, they all have options to implement systems like this in some form or fashion that help you speed up your pages. They make the website more pleasant to use. So be sure to research what you have available based on what website builder you're using. And that brings me to the next most common mistake I see all the time, which is not leading with an elevator pitch. So when someone visits your site, they should immediately know they're in the right place. So you should be leading off with a few sentences describing who you are, what you do, who you work with, and what's in it for them. So again, just instantly, they're like, oh yeah, I need a brand design. This is a brand designer. I work for a tech company. This brand designer designs for tech companies. I'm in the right place. This is the person I should be working with. So it doesn't have to be anything crazy. You want to keep it short and sweet. Again, just like a sentence or two. You can elaborate on your skill set and what you do and who you do it for on your about page. I do recommend including an about page on your portfolio, but this elevator pitch at the top of your homepage should just be kind of introducing yourself. So here's a great example of an elevator pitch on JD Reeves' portfolio. He says, JD Reeves is a brand designer working with tech companies to create thoughtful and effective brand identities with soul. So he's telling you exactly what he does, who he works with, and what sets him apart. And so immediately I know I'm either in the right place or the wrong place. I know if I should keep browsing this website or not. He then gets into social proof and his work. So I think this is a really nice website and a great way to lead off with an elevator pitch. And so finally, our 10th biggest mistake that I see all the time is not leading with your best work. And so the reason that you want to be leading with your best work is that most hiring managers are only going to be looking through 1 to 2 projects before they move on to the next portfolio, right? So if I'm sitting down and I need to look through 100 portfolios, I don't have time to go through 6 projects for each designer. I usually can tell pretty quickly whether I'm in the right place, right? If this designer has the right skill set, the right amount of experience. And so 1 to 2 projects is usually all I need to do that. And so that being said, you want to make sure that you're leading with your best projects, increasing the likelihood of them seeing your strongest work. If you have your best work at the bottom, if it's your 6th, 7th project, I'm probably not going to look at it. If your first project is your most recent, but it happens to be your worst project, I'm probably going to be clicking off to the next portfolio. So just organize them in such a way where your best work is at the top, above the fold, or as close to the fold as possible. And so leading with your best work applies not only to the order of your projects, but also the order of images within the case studies themselves. So as we saw in one of those earlier examples, you really want to be leading with an image or a video that draws people in, something that wows them, that makes them want to keep scrolling to learn more about the project. A mistake I see here a lot is that designers want to tell a story, which is great, but that means that they start off with sketches and concepts and the rough drafts to show you like where it began and where it ends up. But the problem with doing that is that you end up hiding the best work at the end of the portfolio, right? So it's great to show your thought process. It's great to show sketches, all that, but don't lead off with that at the very top. Make sure that first you're drawing people in, you're showing them that end result that looks super sexy, great design, and then they'll be interested to see how you got there. So again, just make sure you're leading with the best work on both your case study list and the images within the case study. All right, thanks so much for coming to my TED Talk on graphic design portfolio mistakes. I hope you guys learned something. I hope there was something in here that you're able to take away to go apply to your own portfolio, to improve it, to iterate on it. It is a never-ending process for sure. If you did find this valuable, be sure to go check out the Artful Ruckus shop that I just launched. You can book a one-on-one portfolio review with myself if you're looking to get more in-depth feedback, and be sure to check out some of the other videos on the channel. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Go out there and make a ruckus.